My name is Drew Waldron, and I am on with supply chain authority, futurist, and AI expert, Nada Sanders. Nada, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Drew, for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled.
Well, we might as well begin talking about the new edition of your book, Humachine, which was recently released. In that book, you discuss the future of human enterprise. And for anyone that might not know, what is the core messaging behind Humachine?
The core messaging is that the secret to success with AI for businesses doesn't just rest with technology and AI, but it rests with talent, and it rests with the process of integrating that talent with the technology. One, the company cannot just simply acquire AI and technology. It has to be integrated through a very well thought out process. And let me just add, if I may, this is the second edition of the book. The first edition came out December 2019. And when we were doing research for that book, we were actually going into companies to identify what is the latest and greatest that technology can do. We were stunned that every single executive, SVP, technology leader said to us, the secret is people. So we wrote the first edition, December 2019, and you and I and everyone listening knows what happened in 2020. Then COVID hits, and keep in mind that with all the technology, we still couldn't predict the onset of the pandemic, what it was going to do, the shutdowns, all of it. So we're locked in. Fast forward, we were asked to do a second edition of the book. I personally did all the interviews of CEOs, SVPs. And what was fascinating is that with the first edition, we learned that the secret is people. I really wasn't sure what we were going to find with the second edition. But what we found, Drew, was that it wasn't just people anymore, but it was people on steroids, meaning human skills. What we sought over and over again is that it was no longer just people, but it was also people that have interpersonal skills, communication skills. This book, the second edition, came out in March, a few months back, or 6 months at this point. I have been continuing to conduct this research. And what I am finding over and over again is that companies need to be extremely thoughtful as to how they spend their money on LLMs and AI, which is very expensive, by the way. They have to think about their talent and the integration of that talent and holding on to people that have these interpersonal skills. That is going to be, moving forward, the differentiator. And if you think about it, if you look at companies like, let's say you're looking Pepsi and Coke, right? Similar, if I dare say, both have access to LLMs and AI. What is the secret ingredient that makes one stand out? It's going to be those interpersonal skills. It's going to be those skills of knowing how to connect with the key customers, key suppliers, all of it.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I feel like in the last 2 years, the focus has been far more on AI than it has been on people. And as an AI expert, you have observed everything from the beginning of the AI boom that occurred in, let's say, late 2022, early 2023 to right now. So 2 years in to humanity having a very new relationship with this technology, what predictions of yours have played out and what predictions from that era haven't?
Great question. So let me just kind of go back and just say that right now, today, as we're doing the interview, my sentiment is a little bit different than it even was a month or 2 months ago. Remember that AI hallucinates. It has so many mistakes. Right now, there's a tremendous amount of money being poured into this technology. I am forecasting that we are going to reach a plateau, and I think we're going to see a scale back and things are going to settle down. It is definitely a tool that companies and all of us need to use, but we are going to go back to a lot of the human kinds of skills. We're not going to jettison AI. We're not going to not use it, but we are going to be a little bit less hyped up about it as we are now. I feel, given my background, so my background, my training is in forecasting and within the enterprise and supply chain context. What does that mean? I understand supply chains and I understand how businesses, people, teams work with algorithms, technology, AI. So during COVID, I was one of the people that wrote about what was going to happen with the lockdowns, with the economy, with the pandemic. There were a lot of terms that I had used and came to bear. The one thing I was wrong about is I actually was wrong about retail. I thought coming out of it, we were going to go back to the 1920s retail, high fashion. That was the one thing I did not anticipate, that retail customers, consumers we would go into comfortable wear. So that was the one thing. But I would say with regard to the closures, with regard to what happened at every step of the way with the vaccines, with hand sanitizer, I was correct. But here's the thing, I didn't want to be correct. I wanted to be wrong because I could see what was going to happen. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I was locked in, just like you and everybody listening. I was a victim as well. And so what I wanted to do was, if my knowledge and what I know was going to have any merit and value, I wanted to be able to speak out, and I wanted to either be wrong or be able to have some kind of an impact. So I was in a lot of shows on CNN, CNBC, so forth, but it was unfortunate and kind of frustrating, honestly. I've been doing this for a long time, that businesses, that companies continue to make the same mistakes over and over. Problems when it comes to their supply chain, problems when it comes to their use of technology and forecasting, inability to scale their operations. We're talking about the same kinds of issues, and that we saw those mistakes over and over again. And it was really frustrating because, again, I was locked in as well.
And when you're working with these companies, whether it's a smaller startup that you're working with or some massive corporation, what kinds of advice are you giving to leaders regardless of the size of their company?
Number one, they've got to go back and rethink their business model. So we forget that we are right now, all of us continue to be in a new normal. 2019, 2018 is gone. So all the businesses that I know that have come out that are still standing, even though it's a few years back and we don't even want to think about COVID anymore, I can tell you when it comes to revenues, cash flows, business position, companies are continuing to rethink how are they structured? Are they going to restructure how they're going to acquire AI? So number one, we're in a new normal. You have to rethink your business model. That's the number one. It may continue to be what you used before, but reassess, step back and say, what is the value proposition? What is our competitive priority? What's our strategy? Who are we in the marketplace? Then when it comes to technology, acquire AI strategically, deliberately, with purpose. Do not just follow the leader. That is extremely important, and be limited in scope, because what happens if you are going to go full on in, you're going to spend a tremendous amount of money. You're not going to be able to pay for everything. So you have to be really thoughtful how you use your funds. You have to invest in your talent. We are finding over and over again that just acquiring technology isn't sufficient. You have to invest in the talent and continuing in lifelong learning and reskilling and training talent. One of the things that I point out in the book, I point to executives, is Kasparov's law. It's not really popular. It hasn't gotten as much press as I think it should. And I've actually had the opportunity to speak with Gary Kasparov a few months back again with regard to this. What is Kasparov's law? What did Kasparov show? It's really simple. It's basically, he was able to show and prove through his chess competition is that an average person, an average talented worker person, coupled with an average machine, but a superior process of integration, can outperform a superior talented person, a superior machine, and a superior person and a superior algorithm that are not connected in the right way. Think about that. That means that you take an okay algorithm, an okay technology, and you take some average talent that you have, but you have devised a system of integrating them to work together. They can outperform the better, the more superior AI out there. That is absolutely huge. Why companies are not investing not just in AI, but in their talent and considering how that talent is integrated with the technology. It is on honestly beyond me, because when it comes to the finances, cost a heck of a lot less. So I would say start with strategy. Think about, again, the technology to enhance what you're trying to do. Don't just follow the leader in your industry. You want to leapfrog. You want to be unique in what your offering is. And then put money in the talent as well, and also into how you integrate that talent with the technology. So it's really that symbiosis of the technology that you have and the talent that you have. And the other thing that I wanted to tell you, Drew, that I've noticed, I've literally been watching this over the last few days, isn't just even the last few months. I'm seeing more and more signals from industry leaders of companies wanting talent that has interpersonal skills. I actually just talked to somebody yesterday who was denied a promotion in a digital marketing space because he didn't have the quote high level of interpersonal skills. I'm seeing more and more of those kinds of things because I would say with a lot of people, this is especially the Gen Zs, many of those skills for people locked down, we've kind of atrophied those skills as we've been mesmerized with technology and with STEM. I come from a STEM background as well, but I think over the last few years, we've atrophied some of those skills. Those skills are now going to be the really differentiating factor. It's the one thing that AI can't do.
Changes do you think have happened recently where those leaders that you were talking about are now giving out those signals that these interpersonal skills are more valuable? Like, what do you think happened in the last year or 2 years to create that change?
A number of things. First of all, we're seeing more and more companies that are using LLMs, adopting LLMs, getting the corporate accounts with OpenAI and so forth. So, it's kind of leveling out the playing field to some degree. I mean, it costs a tremendous amount of money to do this, but to some degree, there is access to this on a general scale. But what's happened is that we've all come back to the offices, to the work environment. And what we are seeing is that while there is this access across industry sectors to the LLMs, the chat GPTs, the Claudes, all of it, now as we are needing to take the information provided by the algorithms and use that to actually close a deal, to negotiate, we're finding that we really need those skills and we're coming short. People are coming short and companies are seeing, wait, you're not able to do this, we got to let you go, got to get the next person in here. We're not seeing as much talent with those skills. And that's really kind of what's happened. The entire work environment has changed. We have seen this sort of overall high level of access to the Gen AI. And as you had mentioned at the onset, we're all talking about it. We've all been talking about it. We all have access to it to some degree, but we've got to get people in there that know how to interpret it, that know what to ask it. To be honest with you, whenever I use it, there's a lot of words. There's a lot of content, but I have to decipher and go through it to really make sense out of it and to actually be able to understand where is the hype, where's the real content. Somebody without experience doesn't know how to do that. So one of the other things that we're seeing is that more senior leaders in companies are able to use AI to a better degree and better outcomes because they know how to interpret. Somebody fresh out of school, somebody without what we call domain knowledge. Domain knowledge is knowledge that one has in their industry sector. That is a key differentiator. Without domain knowledge, you don't know what is real, what is not. Does this make sense? Does this not? How do I use this? One of the other concerns that I'm seeing is that we are not creating a path. We're losing a path from an HR perspective in order to train young talent in a variety of different ways, train them in order to be able to develop those skills where they do gain experience and gain domain knowledge and also gain interpersonal skills. So this is where, coming full circle, companies should not only invest in AI, but they need to invest in continual training of talent. This is really serious stuff. It's very serious because the time window to react is really short. I'm seeing these changes occurring almost daily basis. So I would encourage leaders to act very quickly in terms of how they run their businesses, how they rethink the business strategy, how they're acquiring AI, how they're using it, and to be really careful that they're not just falling to the hype and not falling to the pressure in order to say they're doing something with AI, because we want businesses to be left standing in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years.
If I could kind of delve a little deeper into that, what do you think is the worst case scenario if, let's say, several years go by and that gap of skills, that gap of domain knowledge you were talking about gets bigger and bigger, and we have all these young people who are very willing to learn these new skills but unable to do so? What does that situation look like?
What it looks like is you're going to see companies declare bankruptcy. You're going to see companies that are simply going to go out of business. Just think about how many companies went out of business during COVID. The year of the bankruptcy was 2020. For us to say, okay, we got out, we're out of the woods, companies survived, I think that we're in a new precipitous era that I think moving forward in the next 2 years, 3 years, what we could see is we could see a number of companies really go out of business as they are leapfrogged by other companies that become market leaders that are able to actually have talent that knows how to interact and use AI. AI is not going away, okay? It has capabilities that we don't have as humans, the ability to really mine all the data that we know. But the ability to use that rests on leaders. And so what's going to happen is the companies that simply lose that talent, that stumble, that lag, we're going to see market leaders come to the front very, very quickly. I can tell you, I'm trying very hard not to mention companies, but in numerous industry sectors, we are seeing companies compete for the leadership positions, acquiring AI, seeing what they can do, restructure their enterprises, restructure how they source. Everybody listening knows the move away from China, moving to India, Vietnam, Mexico. What does that flow of goods look like? How do we integrate talent to make decisions with technology overlaid on top of the entire flow of products, goods, services? What will happen is we're going to rapidly see other market leaders come to the front. Even if we take industry sectors like, let's say, fast fashion, that was pioneered by companies like Zara. We've seen Shein and other companies, leapfrog and go to the lead in those sectors. How did they do that? They did it through a new business model and the way they've used AI. We are going to continue to see that, and it's going to move really quickly. So leaders have to act very fast. I would also urge boards to be really up to date and keep their leaders accountable. We cannot have a very short-sighted view in terms of just sort of jumping and acquiring technology.
Oh my gosh, your ability to kind of zoom out, see the big picture, and articulate it so well is unbelievably impressive. And Nada, I think we are coming to the end of this interview, but we always end these interviews by asking what advice you have for young people. But if I could tailor it to your industry more specifically, what advice do you have for young professionals entering the workforce for the first time across all sectors, dealing with the challenges that you outlined in this interview?
Thank you for asking. So I'm a professor. I work with students from undergrads to exec MBA and MBA. So I actually have two, if you will. First one, and it's really important, you have to keep getting up. Put your ego aside. You're going to make mistakes. And, I know we've heard all this, make mistakes, learn from it. That is absolutely true. Everybody listening at all levels, there have been numerous studies that have shown across industry sectors, military, medicine, politics, who succeeds? It's the people that keep showing up. Keep showing up. Look at the mistakes you made. Say, hey, what could I have done differently? And do not show up. Keep getting up. And the other thing that I have to tell everybody, I think we're in an era now where if you could take only one class, it would be communication, public speaking, negotiation, to be able to look at other humans and communicate with them. We're losing a lot of those skills. And those are the skills, those human skills are the ones that are going to get you through the long run.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of which, thank you for sitting down, looking at me, and communicating with me throughout this interview. It was a fantastic conversation. That is going to conclude our interview with Nada Sanders. Nada, thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much.